Hey y'all, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be looking at a chess game that I played recently in the Austin Summer Round Robin here in Austin, if the name doesn't catch you adrift, against another very high rated opponent. Today I'm going to be playing someone I've played many times on this channel, by the way, Evan Bates, who I seem to always get good positions against. And yeah, we're going to see if we can do it again. So let's get into the chess. Oh, by the way, currently I have, I believe, 2.5 out of 5 right now in the tournament, and if I win this game I will be like in one of the higher places, in like 3rd or 2nd place out of everyone. Either way, I start off the game with d4 and my opponent goes d5, which is a very reasonable way to play, and I play the move bishop to f4, which is what I normally play, which is the London system. My opponent goes with c5. I play the move e3, very logical. You can't take this pawn in many cases because it just gives black the whole center. It's basically a queen's gambit from the other side. Black will play a move like knight c6. Black is going to be playing in the center. Black is going to be trying to get this pawn back, and it's like a way to play, but it's not something you normally want to do in these positions. So I play the move e3. My opponent plays knight to c6, and I've recently been playing the move knight to f3. And then my opponent plays a very simple move, knight to f6, and for some reason I forget all of my theory in this position. Every single bit of theory. I have prep. I have a lot of prep here. But for some reason all of it is gone at this point, and I realized, okay, I had been getting into some issues in positions prior, like that look like this, if I simply play a move like c3. Because there's this line with bishop to f5 and queen to b6 that I really didn't like. And I was wondering, I was very concerned. I was very concerned if I should play in this line again. And I decided, okay, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try and make sure that the position never arises, because I really hate those positions and I lost a lot of games back when I was playing that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to play a different move. I'm going to be playing the move d takes on c5. After a whole 8 minutes of thought, 6 minutes of thought, which is bad for move 5. But yeah, d takes on c5. Again, the move I just told you that you don't want to play in this position, but I am playing it because I have an idea. And the point is that after my opponent goes with the move pawn to e6, which is very logical, going after the pawn, you can also win the pawn back with queen to a5. After a move like c3 and takes. This c3 I think is better because it forces takes, because I'm threatening to move pawn to b4. c3 and takes, we get into a very interesting position with knight to b2, and white actually has pretty decent control of the center, and white tries to stop black's bishop from developing if black allows it. But anyway, my opponent goes with the pawn to e6, which is more logical, and my idea here was I was simply going to be playing the move pawn to c4. My opponent was going to take on c5, and then I was going to play the move knight to c3. And I was like looking at this position from afar, and I was like, okay, you know what, I don't have that much center control, but I'm pressuring the center from the side. This pawn on e6 is kind of stopping my opponent from infiltrating with the move pawn to d4, which is a move he would like to play. Now it would just be bad, because here I can go takes, and if bishop takes, I can play something like knight to b5, put pressure here, and here. And white would just be borderline winning. And of course, if the queen takes, it's much the same thing. I just trade queens, and I go knight to b5 here. After bishop b6, my opponent is under wraps in long castles or something, and I don't know. It makes sense here. I guess here there's 94, but whatever. Yeah. So my opponent didn't go for that. My opponent doesn't go for these weird moves with d4 because he's 2000. Actually, he was talking to me before the game. Not before the game, but earlier in the tournament, I was asking him about what his rating was, because I hadn't seen him in a while, and he told me that he was actually up to 2070 in live rating or something, which is kind of crazy. So I was very excited to play him later on, and this game I was like, okay, I'm going to play someone high rate. I'm going to try and win. Anyway, my opponent castles, and I think here again, because there's a lot of very interesting reasons to think about this position. Like, for example, do I take here? It's not the worst idea in the world. Yes, I can do this, and it would give white, it would give black an IQP. Let's say knight d5, pawn d5, give white an IQP. And I was looking at this. It's very interesting. I can put pressure on this in the long term, but I would also realize that this variation where I go for this, I have very bad weaknesses over here. Normally, when black goes for some checks like this in these London positions, you can either block with a knight on c3 on b2, this knight, not this knight, or you can play the pawn to c3. And I didn't think that this was very good here, because if I went for something normal, like bishop e2, for example, my opponent immediately goes queen e5. Knight d2 is a bad move, I thought, because my opponent can probably just, I don't even know, open stuff up like this, or like this, maybe. And I'm going to have a hard time castling. I'm going to be hating myself for the position, and we don't want to play that. And of course, if I move the king, can't castle, I'm just worse here. So it's like, why am I doing that? Why am I opening up the center right away? Another thing I can do, I can play this move bishop to e2, which is very logical as well. The computer actually wants me to play this move. The point is, yeah, of course he can make my bishop move again. I don't have to take, I can play queen c2, but I think queen c2 isn't good now because of like knight b4 ideas, and he gets into d3. So I probably have to take queen d1, rook d1. We get into an equal position. I don't really like this because there's just not much play for both sides. I'd rather get a more dynamic game, and this is very, very boring. So, okay, I don't really want to go for that either. What else can I do? What else can I do? And I was thinking, I was like, okay, I don't really know what to do. I don't really know what to do. So I'm just going to play a move that I think is very logical, kind of forcing. Makes sense. I'm going to play this move pawn to a3. Makes a lot of sense. And the point is that I'm first of all, I'm threatening b4. So my opponent has to respond to this. I thought my opponent probably would play the move pawn to a5. And now, if we look at the other position where I take here, and knight d5 here, pawn e6, my opponent has some ideas of queen a5 and bishop to b4. But now, with the pawn on a3, now this queen a5 ideas don't work anymore, because I would always play this move b4, and white would actually be doing quite well. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. Let's play it. Pawn to a3. My opponent didn't think too long here. He just simply played the move pawn to a5, which made sense to me. I thought this was what he was going to play. He stops me from playing pawn to b4, because this is actually kind of scary. If you allow, let's random move h6. If you allow white to play like this, and like c5 and stuff, white gets a decent play, like some like decent play in the future. Like we have this 3-on-2 permanently, and normally this is pretty good for white. So my opponent didn't like this. It makes sense. The computer gives this very interesting move rook e8 and just try to play for e5 as quickly as possible, but we're humans, we don't play like that, and he plays pawn to a5. Now I played, okay, this is good for me because he weakens some light squares. I'm simply going to play the move bishop to e2 now, and if he takes here, now I'm simply going to play queen c2, rook d1. I'm going to get to the d file first. This pawn is going to be lost in the future. I'm going to get a knight here maybe in some lines, and maybe my knight's going to get to b4, and like you can see, like, okay, the light squares are mine. I'm going to be very, very happy in this position. I have good control of the center. I don't know. Life is pretty good. Okay, my opponent doesn't take. He plays rook to e8. Very logical move. Might be planning to play some e5. So the first thing I'm thinking here is to play the move knight to e5, simply stopping him from playing e5 altogether. And maybe I can go for something in the future over there with the knight there, because of course stopping him. But I was like looking at this move knight e5, and I was looking at it, and I didn't like that my opponent could now play the move d4. And the point is that after knight e5 d4, let's say knight takes. Actually, bishop takes is actually a lot better. Point is, I guess now I have to play knight c6 and bc6, and this is just very strong because he's playing e5 now. Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, let's say bishop takes. I was just worried about knight takes really, and if I were to like castle here, like I don't know, I don't really like this position as much. I feel like my knight is going to be eventually kicked out from this square. Like my opponent can just like, I don't even know, play something. Maybe he can take and play. Okay, I have no idea. I guess I don't understand this position at all. But yeah, I was looking at this and I just didn't like that my opponent could play this. I guess bishop d4 I might have been worried about. Not too sure. Like for example, I have to take on c6 now. B takes c6, and after castles, my opponent can do a lot of things really. But the first one is like playing e5, and bishop g3, and yeah, this is a big problem. This is just a big problem. computer gives bishop e3, but I don't understand why you would do this, because at the very end, at the very least, I thought that maybe this, and I don't like this position for white at all, because this pawn is a weakness. This pawn is like not the strongest pawn in the world, because a5 is actually making sense now that I can't play b4, and I can't really go after his weaknesses here. Like, this is a weakness, yeah, it is, but if I ever play a move like bishop f3, he's just gonna play move e4. This is a problem. He's gonna play queen b6 to go after it. He's going to probably, I don't know, bring the rook in somehow quickly, and I'm not having fun. I'm not having fun. So we don't do that. We don't do knight e5. Okay, so if I'm not going to be playing the move knight to e5, then what is the problem? If e5 comes right now, if I'm not stopping it, is it really that big of an issue? That's the question I have to ask myself. So let's say black gets an extra move here. He plays the move e5. I play some like bishop g3, and he plays like d4, and he comes into the position. Is this good? Is this good for black? Okay, I probably have to take. He takes with the pawn. I don't really know. I'm not really too sure. Maybe I go knight b5. I put pressure there. Is that a problem? Currently, yes. He can play the move d3, and he'd be winning the bishop. But, okay, let's say I castle now. Let's say I castle. He goes e5, bishop g3. He goes d4. I'm not too sure this is exactly what my opponent wants. I would take the pawn on d4. He'd probably take back with this. And I don't even know, maybe knight a4 here. Is that correct? Is that good for him? He can't play d3 now, because it would just be a free pawn. He plays something like, I don't even know, bishop d6, but that's blocked by the e5. Sorry. He plays something like bishop d6. I can probably even like take it. Maybe I can take it, queen takes, and then maybe I can, I don't even know, maybe I can play something like c5. I'm not too sure. I feel like this is a little weakening. I feel like this pawn to e5 is overextending. So, okay, I'm just simply going to castle. And if he plays e5, he can. But I don't think it's correct, so I play the move castles. Nice move. It's one of the best moves in the position. And e5 is also one of the best moves in the position. And this is actually what he has to play here. If he doesn't play e5, white is just better. White is just actually very, very comfortably better. He has to play e5. I was also thinking about him maybe playing the move d4. And I was looking at this for a while. Takes, bishop takes, and I was going to play some queen to c2. Then I was going to bring a rook here, and I was arguing that I was going to be able to get to the d file first, and I was going to be happy. Okay, pretty reasonable. e5 in this position. My opponent plays e5. I can either play, yeah, both these are reasonable. Bishop g3 makes a lot of sense. And d4, e takes d4, e takes d4, knight a4, all the top edge in line. Bishop d6, queen d6, and c5. Everything that I was saying. Queen, not there, but like, because of knight b6. But queen, I don't know, the queen can go anywhere. But then I thought this pawn was weak. And actually in this position, it is equal. But it's equal in like an engine level. It's equal on like an engine level. Engine says equal. A lot of the times what it really means is that there are chances for both sides. And in this case, there are chances for both sides because white has a 3-on-2 on the queen side. Again, this pawn, while it might look strong currently, is actually a little bit flimsy. And if my opponent doesn't manage to protect it properly, white is going to be able to win the pawn very easily, and white is going to be able to do well. And my opponent saw all this, and I'm pretty sure that he evaluated it as bad for him, and that's why he played the move that he did. But the move that he played in the game was much, much worse than pawn to e5. He plays d takes on c4. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't understand this move. I don't understand this move at all, because the point of this technically is to open up the center, and he was worried, he was telling me after the game, he was worried that I would get this 3-on-2 on the queen side and I would just be better here. But actually, this just makes it worse, because I calculated this, I looked at this, and this is pretty simple. He spent, by the way, like 20 minutes on this move, crazy amount of time. I quickly play the move queen to c2, and Black is just just much worse. Black is just much worse. There's basically nothing for him to do. Because what do you play here? Like, if you look at this position, what do you play here? White is going to win back the pawn. Like, you cannot stop white from winning back the pawn. That's the only thing I calculated. You can't stop white from winning back the pawn. White is getting to the d file first, so the queen is going to be going to get booted from it. And at the end of the day, you have this piece that's bad, this piece that's bad, and I would even argue that this piece is not the best bishop in the world because this bishop isn't really doing anything. This bishop isn't really doing anything. And while all of my pieces have a job, this bishop has a great diagonal. This knight is defending the center. This knight is ready to jump in on the queen's side. My queen is perfectly placed on this diagonal, so there's attacking ideas and it's going after the c pawn. And both of my rooks are able to get into the game pretty easily on either the d file or the c and d files, like this and this. So okay. White is just better. My opponent thinks here for a while, plays the move knight to d5. But after the simple move rook a d1, white is +2. Yes, if I take the knight here, my opponent can take with the e pawn and I lose all my advantage immediately, but we're not going to do that. We simply go rook a d1. And this pin on the queen is like impossible for black to deal with. It's just losing. He's still going to lose the pawn on c4. Currently, yes, he's up a pawn, but it does not matter. Like the pawn is on c4 is weak. He can't go b5 to defend it because, of course, that'd be a free pawn. Actually, be even worse for him if he went b5. And like I wasn't able to win this immediately because these pawns are split and they'd be lost over time. And also, by the way, I'm threatening this move e4 to win the knight. So it's like it's a hoofer basically. And after 2 mistakes in a row comes a third mistake as my opponent plays the move queen to e7. And white is just winning. White is just winning. White is winning very easily, by the way. If I found this move properly, I would have won immediately. The move is rook d5. And after e d5, knight d5, I'm getting... Sorry. Whoa, sorry. Knight g5, g6. Then knight d5. Only then knight d5. And you can't go to e4. That's the difference. Okay, whoa. If knight d5 right away, why is this so bad? Yeah, queen e4 here. And I can't, and this isn't any good anymore. This is just not good anymore. Okay, wait, is it good? Knight d2. Oh, rook takes f4. And we play an equal position. Where my opponent has a weakness, but now he plays b5. And I'm worse because, and I'm like, I'm okay, but my opponent's getting his pieces out. That's very interesting, but I didn't. Yeah, I guess I didn't see that right away, and I wasn't really looking at that position. But anyway, move I play in the game is also just fine. It's still +3. It's not +3.9. I play the move knight takes d5, and after e takes d5, I calculate this line that I'm pretty sure my opponent missed. After rook takes d5, which I played in the game, there's better moves here. I realize that my opponent is simply going to play the move bishop to e6. This is like why he played queen e7. I'm sure he calculated all of this, and he played this all instantly with bishop to e6. I realized that I had the very, very easy idea of playing the move knight to g5 here. Technically, a brilliant move. It doesn't matter. You can't take because it's just checkmate in 2. It's not very brilliant. And I'm just going to be winning the game. And I was calculating some things here. I play rook g5, and I'm winning the game. Sacking the queen doesn't really do anything. It's +6. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get the bishop pair. My opponent's going to have weaknesses for the rest of the game. I'm going to win. I'm just going to win. So, okay, my opponent plays g6. Only move. You have to play this move, otherwise you will lose. All right. Now I take on e6. My opponent has to take with the f-pawn, because if he takes with the queen, he loses the bishop and the game. So he has to do this. Now, I just have to be precise. Currently, I'm not up any material. Currently, I only have a very positional advantage. Yes, the position is great. The position is amazing, but it's still very, very complicated to play. My opponent has a weakness here. This is basically what I've done. I've given my opponent a weakness here, and I have the bishop pair, and I have active pieces. That's all. That's literally everything that I have in the position. There's no other advantage for me. Maybe this pawn you can consider as weak too, but it doesn't matter. Rook d1 is the move that I ended up choosing. I didn't like rook d2 as much because I thought that there might be some ideas where this rook comes in like contact with the bishop on b4 and gets hit under pressure, and I didn't really want to deal with any of those lines. So rook d1 makes sense. My opponent plays pawn to b5, I think, for a while here, and I played the move pawn to a4. Point is, I was very much calculating what would happen if he split the pawns. I would take this pawn and I would be like winning the game here. I'm hitting the knight, hitting the pawn. If you come in like this, I can just take this, I think, and white is winning. So it's like, okay, that seems very reasonable. If he goes here, I also just pick up the pawn on c4 and white is winning. And the real line is what happens after knight to b4, which is what I was really calculating with this move pawn to a4. And I have a choice. I can either go to c1, to b1, or to e4. For some reason, I didn't calculate the move queen e4 at all. I didn't even look at it. I guess I missed it, but I just didn't think that this was anything. I thought maybe I looked at queen e4, ba, and bishop c4, and I didn't like this position somehow. I don't know why, or like why I wouldn't like this position, because rook d2, rook fd1, this pawn is a weakness. I'm coming in here, like I don't understand. I don't really understand. I play h4, bishop g5, bishop e5, bishop d4 ideas. I don't know. I really have no idea why I didn't like this, because this seems amazing. But whatever, I didn't play queen e4. I played another equally decent move. Not equally, queen e4 is much better. I ended up thinking for a while. I played the move queen to c1. I didn't like queen b1 for reasons. I don't really know why I didn't like queen b1, if I'm being honest. But anyway, queen c1 on the board. My opponent thinks for a while, plays the move knight to d3. And I have to calculate here if it's okay for me to like not do it. Like if I go queen b1, which was like one of my ideas originally, I put pressure on the knight, he takes my bishop, I go here, he can't take this pawn because of the c4 pawn. I was like looking, is that what I want to do? Is that what I want to do? I was like, okay, no, I'm gonna take the knight. And after pawn takes, I was looking at this position for a while after rook d3, and I thought b takes a4, and for some reason I didn't understand that this was just completely winning for me. Like if we go into this line, rook d3, ba4, I can even play like queen a1, and I'm gonna win the pawn back, and there's like nothing he can do. Queen b7, I can go queen a4, queen b2, and I don't even know, rook b3 maybe. Okay, I'm losing all my advantage in every line. Like rook d7 is what the engine says, and I'm dominating him. Or like for example, I don't do that. I play the move that I was gonna play anyway, queen c4. This makes more sense to me. I put pressure in the center. Like if he goes here, I can just put the queen. I can take the pawn on a4. Then I can go here, and life is good. This pawn is being pinned to the king. I'm gonna win it at some point. I'm gonna be happy. And yeah, but for some reason I didn't do that. I take on b5, and I missed this very, very easy sequence. Rook a8. My idea was I was gonna play this move queen c4. Hit the pawn, put pressure on this pawn. I was just like, I'm going to win the game. I'm going to pick up this pawn on d3. My opponent's not going to have any play, and it's going to be GG's. And then I completely blank on the move pawn to d2. I just didn't see this. Don't know what to say. I just didn't see it. And already I'm doing a lot worse. If I play a move like e4, going after the pawn like this, I thought maybe my opponent could play like rook d4 and bring another rook in, but this is just wrong. This is just wrong. Like queen c2, bishop b4, I can just take the pawn. And I don't understand why I didn't go for this, and this is my last chance in the position. The actual best move is to play move h4, which I actually looked at during the game. You can't take this because of queen e6, and you're basically getting checkmated. And like if you do something like, I don't know, bishop b4, I'm going to play like bishop g5. I'm going to win the exchange, so you can't do that. So maybe you play rook dc8 going for some counterplay. But then there's queen e4. And I'm just winning, and it's over. Yeah, I should have played h4. Instead, I went for a different line. I played the move bishop to e5. And the point is, I want to go bishop to c3, and I want to pick up the pawn that way. And I was trying to be like cautious. I was trying to like play accurately here, because I could feel like my like focus was like going away slowly. So I had to kind of get back into the spin of things. With bishop e5, I thought this was a good idea, but my opponent is always faster. Rook a to c8. I played queen to b3, trying to keep this idea alive. Again, I should have not done that. I should have been more active with a move like queen to g4, going for some play on the king side. Instead, queen to b3 on the board. My opponent goes bishop to b4. Bishop c3, I thought now is a bit of an issue because, yeah, not rook d3. Yeah, takes, and rook d3 I thought was a problem. And he's going after this, and I wasn't sure what I could do here. I just didn't think that this was anything good for me. So I didn't go for that. And I ended up playing this move f4 after another long think. And the point is I want to maybe go f5 at some point. And I'm trying to make pressure on the king because I have this diagonal to work with. And I'm looking at everything. I'm trying to get everything working. So f4 makes logical sense, right? My opponent goes rook d5, hitting the pawn on b6, on b5, right? So I have to push it to b6. I play pawn to b6. I don't really think too long about this move. I'd already kind of prepared this. My opponent goes queen d7, going for this and trying to play this move rook d3. And here I'm basically forced to play the move bishop d4. And this is where my opponent is able to end the game pretty much easily, get into an equal endgame. He takes the bishop. And it's over. The position is done. Why is it done? Why is this just a draw? Well, after e takes and queen takes d4, king to h1, my opponent goes for a queen trade. And my opponent has this very, very annoying pawn here. I'm eventually going to have to sacrifice a rook for it. I'm going to give the exchange back. I'm not up any pawns. Even though my opponent has bad pawn structure, there's nothing for me to do. And I have officially blundered into a completely drawn position, which is very, very annoying. Maybe I shouldn't have played queen d5 here. I ended up trading the queens after 10 minutes of thought because I didn't really know what else to do. I could have played this move queen e3 and played on, but I thought that eventually my opponent could play like rook c2 or something. Actually, not rook c2. There's a lot of moves here that for black that work, like rook d8, I guess, is one of them. And yeah, this is just a draw. I don't have enough play. If I ever like bring my rook out here, first of all, this bishop c5, but let's say rook f3. This queen is actually kind of dominating me, and I feel like black has the winning chances in this position instead of white, which I don't want to give winning chances to my opponent. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? So I ended up taking the queen, and after a long think, I came up with this idea of f5. My point is I'm going to play g3. I'm going to try to ruin his pawn structure. Maybe I can win a pawn for the exchange, and maybe I can like survive somehow. My opponent plays badly. I'm able to win the game, you know? So g5, I play g3. I'm keeping this idea alive. My opponent goes king f7. I go rook to f2. My opponent goes rook b8, and I just went for this endgame where I was up a pawn, but yeah, this is just a draw. Rook f takes d2, takes, rook b6, rook b5, a4 is an interesting move. He's just trying to move his rook piece out of the way. If he were to take the pawn now and rook a5, he thought that this is a better spot for my rook because I'm defending this pawn. My rook is a little more active. Even though this is a draw, he played a4. Rook d4, takes. And the reason why this is a draw, reason why white isn't winning here, because white does have the extra pawn. White's king is cut off on the back rank. And I'm going to have to trade the rook for it. And a pawn up king endgame in this position is simply going to be a draw. There's nothing I can do. My opponent goes h5. I play rook a6, trying to get in. Maybe my opponent will blunder something. You never know. My opponent goes rook b5. I play rook h6, takes. Rook, king g6, rook h8, and rook back to f2. King g1 here, h4, gh4, rook h4, rook b2, rook f4. And in this position, I offer a draw to my opponent because, well, there's nothing else to do. White isn't the only one up a pawn, but I'm still going to be stalemated in the end. This is a very common draw. My opponent declines the draw, which is really annoying. I was like visibly frustrated when he did that. I don't know why. Like, he took on f2 and then declined the draw. And so he like forced us to play more moves, which is annoying because we were running out of space on our notation sheets. Yeah. Anyway, king g4. We play all the way down here. And then one move away from the stalemate, my opponent offers a draw and I accept because this is move 60. And if we were going to play one more move, which should of course be king to g6, and this is just a stalemate, then that would be 61 and we would have to get a whole new notation sheet. So I'm glad that my opponent allowed me to end it there. Anyway, yeah, this is a very disappointing game. I was winning for a while. Again, a draw against someone like him, like a 2000, isn't bad. But again, it just adds to the list of like winning positions I've had against Evan Bates. And yeah, either way, that's all I've got for you today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys found this entertaining, instructive, all of the above. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, tell the YouTubers so you do. And that's it. Good evening and good night.